Guys, I'm going to stop the video there and bring Wes and Jim in and hand over to them. That was just really to whet your appetite. Wes will introduce it, but essentially, if you've got questions you want to ask through the night, I'm going to try and capture those. So if you just put your questions in the chat window, and I'll collate them for the guys, and we'll get to those throughout the evening. But I'll hand over to Wes now. I hope you enjoy the evening.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining another of the 831 podcast hosts. And we're over the moon to be hosting Jim Mallinson this evening, and we'll be getting on with that shortly. I don't know about you guys, but I could have quite easily sat and watched the rest of that video for the rest of the night. It was absolutely captivating. Firstly, a big thank you, obviously, to the Avon Hang Gliding Paragliding Club for allowing us to do this again and making this possible. It's brilliant that we've got these resources, and thank you to you guys for listening. I understand everyone's in the same sort of boat, so we're just trying to put together these sort of things for you to keep you interested. And obviously, it's my podcast, so every listener from me is absolutely superb. So thank you to each and every one of you as well. So we're going to go through the evening, as Sean said, with Jim tonight. We'll get to know Jim a little bit better. He's got some amazing stories. As Sean said, if you have any questions, ask them within Zoom. In the Zoom messaging box, ask them within the Zoom. Sean will then pick 4 or 5 or so, email them over to me, and I'll read them out for Jim at the end of the talk. But until then, I guess it's time to introduce Jim.
Hey, Wes. Hello. Sorry, just in time. I had to go and get everyone in the house to turn off their internet. It was a bit slow here. Hello.
Jim, thank you very much for joining me.
It's a delight to be here. Nice to thanks for the invitation from you and Sean, and looking forward to it. Hopefully I won't be too self-indulgent, but I'm looking forward to having a chat.
I'm hoping you'll be really self-indulgent. Self-indulgence is what we want from you. This has been, for the people who don't know, you and I have been planning on doing this for the 831 podcast for a while, and it just happens that this occurred, and this, I think, is a much better way of doing things, and it allows for you to show off a lot more of the things that you've got up to, because as people are going to find out eventually, you're very multifaceted. It's not just going to be a talk about paragliding. You've got a lot of things, and you'll have done a lot of things that I personally find very interesting.
I say yes. Some people find some of it interesting. It's all fairly esoteric stuff. We can try and go down that as well. The other stuff I get up to. But I'm looking forward to talking about flying as well. Too much talking about the other stuff. Teaching on Zoom all the time, so it makes a nice change to be able to talk about flying.
Well, we'll get plenty of flying talk done then. So let's start at the beginning, really. When did you start flying? How did you get into flying? Is it the same old story? Is it something a little bit different?
No, I don't know if it's the same old story as everyone else. It was a mate of mine. It was 1995, and a mate of mine rang me up, and he said, Jim, let's learn to paraglide. There's a place we can do it near your house on the Isle of Wight. And I said, great. What's paragliding? I didn't have a clue. I had no idea whatsoever. And I was up for it at a loose end. Well, I wasn't at a loose end, but I thought, I'll give this a go. And I got completely hooked. And I did it with Claudia, who's now my wife, and this friend Rupert. And they packed it in pretty quickly. It wasn't for them at all. And I just took to it instantly, especially when I found out, first of all, like most people, you think you're just going to fly down. And even that first flight, I'll never forget that. The first time my feet left the ground, it was on the Isle of Wight. I was probably in the air for about 5 seconds, but that feeling will never go. And then I suppose the next progression was when I realized actually you could stay up on these things as well. And that's when I was just like, oh, this is incredible, right? And I was hooked. And I somehow, for some reason, I just took to it. And the others, they were a bit slower. And in those days, it was, I watched that video the other day of the guy, I can't remember where he was from, but within a year of learning to fly, he was doing vol biv across Kyrgyzstan or somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
That was incredible. When we, the thought of even getting in a thermal in your first year was kind of, that was not going to happen. So
what were you, what were you doing with your life at that point? What were your hobbies? What were you into? Were you always quite adventurous and up for trying new things? Or?
No, not really. And I was never a kind of daredevil type at all. Like when you're a kid or you're going to parties and stuff, and there's the guys who are climbing out the window and doing silly things on the. I bet you're probably one of those guys, Wes. But I was certainly not one of them. I was the guys trying to pull them in. And people think as well, don't they, about paragliding that it's an extreme sport. You're in it for the adrenaline rush, and I'm like, no. If I'm getting an adrenaline rush, it's going wrong, and I don't want to be doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
So. I've always, well, not always, but from 88, 89, I spent most of my time in India, half the year in India, a lot of time in the Himalayas. And we'll talk about that some more. But no, I'd never done anything similar at all. Because never been an extreme sports person or anything like that. A bit of skiing, but, not much.
Yeah, I find a lot of people who I've spoken to are generally drawn to this through, say, climbing or something similar. They've done something that's quite adventurous, or at least within the outdoors. They've been like hikers, or they've walked the Appalachian Trail. Something, there's just something that's drawn them to being outside, and then they look up and see a paraglider. But for yourself, it was just a chance phone call. Let's do this, and you were like, yeah, why not?
And I was at that time also, it was very good timing in terms of sort of development for me to be able to fly, because I just started doing a PhD. But it wasn't very good for my PhD. And in those days, PhDs were very flexible. You didn't have to turn up much. You just sort of left to get on with it. And pretty soon I realized that if the sun was shining and it wasn't too windy, I was not going to get any work done. And I kind of even gave up on that. So I was just, I was living I now live at the foot of Milk Hill, but I was living not far away near Chippenham. And it was perfect. I could just get out and go flying all the time.
So what was the progression from there? You take to it, you enjoy it, you like it. What's the early sort of progression? I guess there wasn't much cross-country flying back then. So was it just a case of flying around the hill, or you were constantly trying to go XC?
Yeah, no. As I say, in those days, XC was like still, you're never going to jump straight into it. It was kind of, I think the things have accelerated so much. But I think the best thing that happened to me then was that pretty soon after I signed off, went off to India and spent 3 months in Goa, where Claudia, my then girlfriend, now my wife, was working on a film. And I was meant to be sitting, doing some work wherever we were living. And in fact, it's a perfect place just to go out. And I spent 2 or 3 hours every afternoon flying in the sea breeze. And so just got, glider control completely under, that was... Mm-hmm. That completely dialed, got totally comfortable on the glider then. And with hindsight, there's nothing better I could have done. I spent probably 100 hours at least, I should think, over that winter, 150 hours just playing around on the cliffs in Goa. So yeah, that was good. And also at the same time, the year before, the April before I was in India, this was funny. I was halfway through my training in the UK and found out about this school near Pune. And I was super keen and went with Claudia. We went off to do a week's training there. And we thought that, the guy running it is a lovely guy, amazing guy called Rajan Juvekar. With hindsight, he probably wasn't as clued up about paragliding as we thought. And the one standout memory was because it was April in Pune, Maharashtra, baking hot. And we would only fly until about 11 o'clock in the morning when the thermals would start. And then the wind would really pick up. It would get much too strong. And one day I was on a Harley, I can't remember what it was called, a Harley something. And, it was beginning to pick up. So it was probably going to be the last flight of the day. And I picked up the wing, turned around to take off, and just fucking rocketed. Excuse me, sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this.
No, you can swear. No, he's apologized.
Rocketed straight up, just obviously stepped into a complete ripper of the thermal. And the last thing I heard was one of the instructors shouting, "Lean forward." Okay, so I just leant forward like that. And I went up probably 2,500, 3,000 feet. And the wind picked up, and I was going, and it took me backwards. The slope was right on the edge of Pune, this big city. And I was looking behind me going, oh shit, there's a city. And then luckily the wind dropped and I started going forwards. And then I just stayed like that. And I flew out probably 2K in front of the hill and then just landed like that. So what the hell happened? And everyone after us, a few of them had done thermaling stuff. They're like, why didn't you turn in it? What were you doing? I was like, I didn't know what was going on. I'd never even soared before at that point. I'd never even done any, beats up the hills, up and along the hill. So, yeah. And then it was after that.
Fire.
That certainly was. That was, that was pretty hairy. I suppose some people might have packed it in at that point, but somehow I kept going.
Like you've mentioned India a few times. what drew you to India? It was something that you were doing. You were frequently going to India anyway. It wasn't the paragliding that drew you to India. You were already a frequenter of India anyway.
Yeah. I went there. I went to India in my gap year, as they say. A friend of mine had come back from India. He was a couple of years older than me, who I was at school with, and he just regaled me with all these tales of how wonderful it was. And through a series of sort of quite a long story of coincidences, I'd got a place at university where I decided I was going to read Sanskrit, which is the ancient language of India. So those two things came together. And I'd already spent, by the time I started flying in 95, when I was 25, I'd already spent, 2 or 3 years probably in India at that point.
Wow.
And the one downside of the PhD was that I had to be busy. I had to be in the UK in October, November, which is the best season for flying in the Himalayas. I didn't actually get to the Himalayas until about, I think the first time I was there to fly was 2000, I think. But I was already in the summer. In the summer I was flying a lot at home here in the UK and in Europe. I was doing a few comps and stuff. I was pretty hooked here, but I never got that chance to go to the Himalayas until late in my PhD, and then once it had finished. But but India's I've been to every year since 1988, I think.
So when you progressed, you've moved on a bit, you've been to India, but you've experienced, when did you first sort of start to experience cross country within the UK and start to I guess you were one of the very early pioneer guys. You were there right at the beginning when it was just sort of taking off cross country flying.
I don't know. I'd say it was more second wave. There were definitely, there were things have been happening already. 95 when I started to fly. I think it was 95 or 97 maybe. Steve Ham, he broke the record with 175k. I remember that.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So people.
I should know that. I've done one of these with Steve, so I should have known that really.
But I started. So I think it was 98, 99. I had one. Lucky, I had, got away from Oliver's and flew 60k. That was like my second cross country, I think. And in those days, it was 57.3. I can remember exactly. And in those days, every point of the kilometre mattered, and that was a pretty long flight. And also in those days, it was when you had to qualify to get into the nationals. Okay, so there were, I think, either through the XC League or through previous nationals results, and then there were a couple of wild cards and stuff like that. So it kind of meant something. If someone was a nationals pilot, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
Wow, he's a nationals pilot. And through that cross country from Oliver's and a couple of others, I managed to qualify for the nationals in, I think it would have been 2000. Yeah, pretty sure it was 2000. And I was thinking about this when I was preparing, thinking about this talk today. A theme throughout my flying career when I haven't done many comps at all now for 10 or more, 15 years, I guess. But I've done a couple since then. But every time I've done a comp or sort of gone to a different level of comp, the first task of the first meet, something insane has happened. And that with the first nationals I did in 2000, there was the task was from Llandinam in Wales, and they set a 47k downwinder, but it was strong wind. And I got up, got away. I remember again, just a bit like when I was in India, got pinged straight up, almost going backwards, but into a thermal and was able to go with it. And then got near did I have a GPS? I think I must have had a GPS. Yeah, I did have a GPS. It was just early days of GPSs. I had one of those MLRs, I think, maybe a Garmin. And I got within a few K of the goal, but I wasn't going to get there. The wind, the task had been set slightly wrong, basically, and the wind was slightly off track to get to the goal. It was too windy. I got there. I got near. I got 3 or 4K away and was, drifting past, trying to get towards it. It was about to land, get another climb, and I suddenly realised there's no way I'm going to get this goal, and this is a bloody good day, so sod it. I was just too keen to fly. I'm going to just keep going. And I imagine that everyone, loads of people will get to goal because it was all the sky gods, it was obviously all the great and the good of paragliding, all the nationals pilots were there. And I didn't land for another 4 hours or something. And when I landed, that was 132K, which again, in those days was huge. So I remember no one flew further than that for about 5 years. So there was I come from nowhere, this sort of naive, youngster. And suddenly I flown further than most people had ever flown in the UK. So I was kind of got lucky there. That sort of made my name. I was given, even though I did very badly in the task because I got nowhere near the goal compared to the others who did try and push and got a bit nearer. So that was good.
That sounds like a typical British task of any comp. So when we've had like every time we have the North-South Cup, we have to, the number one thing we're banking on, right, is calamity. That's the one thing. We have to all just be willing to enjoy whatever happens, whether that's we can't get a coach up to take off and we've got to knock on carpet fitters shop doors and stuff to get up to take off, or the goal not being usable, so you'll just fly on and make wherever you can. That just sounds like British paragliding tasks.
Yeah, I agree. But I think these days we got better at task setting though. I haven't heard of a task for a while where everyone just gets blown off course. A review? I don't know.
No, I certainly haven't heard of that. Definitely not. No.
Because I remember landing. I landed. My GPS said 99k from goal, but obviously down. but I then managed to ring up. And it was a bank holiday Monday. I remember there's a funny story about my retrieve on that one, but maybe you don't want to hear that. And then ringing up, expecting, as I said, loads of people had got to go, but no one had made it at all because it was just too windy. Yeah, I got blown past.
So did anybody else decide to just carry on and just go for it?
No, but a lot of people were pissed off they hadn't tried afterwards.
Yeah, I bet they were.
Because I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, oh, here we go, oh, another thermal. Ooh. Yeah.
What a way to win the day, eh? What a way to win the day. So then you're now an established paraglider pilot, and one of the earliest things I learned about yourself as a pilot and paraglider was your trips to India with like Eddie and stuff. So how does your experiences now in India develop into something that becomes guiding, or how do you take it to the next level, and do you build what you built within India?
Well, yeah. So as I said, that was about the time I first went to Beard flying. I was flying in India, in Goa and Maharashtra in the south because I was only going in the winter. But so the first time I got out to Beard in autumn, I think was 2000 or 99. And it's funny, I look back at that time as well. I was so gung ho. I got a lot more timid. The things I was doing literally on my first flights there. Again, I was throwing myself in the back of valleys that now I would look at. Oh no way! Yeah, so I had a few years of going there in autumn, and then it's no coincidence that we started Himalayan Sky Safaris in 2006, and my first child was born in 2005. There was an excuse to keep going to India. You know how it is. Turn it into a business, and so yeah, I had to go out there every autumn after that. But that was Eddie and John. We're going to Beer intermittently. I was a regular at that from as soon as I went in 2000. I would go for 6 weeks every autumn, and then got chatting to them and said, let's do this. Why don't we make a business out of this, get guiding? I was amazed that John said yes. It was fantastic. That's another thing. One of the things I'd like to say is I've been lucky, and I think it's a good tactic as well for anyone who's kind of fresh into the sport, is to hang out with and fly with the good guys as much as possible. That's how you learn,
Yeah.
Early on, I guess just when I was getting into cross country, I went on a guided course with Bob Drury and Jockey Sanderson. They were guiding it, and it was down in Gordon Gré-Ollière, and Robbie Whittle and Hugh Miller were around. So we ended up flying with all these absolute legends. And I'm a teacher myself, but I'm kind of somewhat skeptical about teaching in many ways as a way of imparting information. I think the best way is just to copy the guys who are good already, and then work it out for yourself pretty much. Got to hang out with John and Eddie a little bit there before we started Himalayan Sky Safaris, and then 2006 we did our first trips.
I mean, it must have been amazing, because I'm guessing India for Western paraglider pilots was quite undiscovered, was it? You were quite fresh blood out there. There was not many big Himalayan
not
trips
much.
done?
I mean, when we were first hanging out in Beer, there were there were rarely more than 10 foreign pilots there, and hardly any Indian pilots as well, because it took a while for the Indian pilots to come on. It was tricky. There wasn't much kit around. They couldn't really learn. The situation has changed massively. We would know everyone, and now I think last time it's funny, I was looking at my pictures thinking it was this October, because I've been every October for 20 years or whatever. And then I remembered, no, this year hasn't happened, has it? And I was 2019. But yeah, when I was there last, I think there were 300 people. You know,
Wow.
insane. It's insane. But so takeoff is a bit hectic these days. But then once you're up, and you know, I've got lots of pictures actually. I mean, I don't know, I could try and share.
Pop some pictures up, definitely, because I think it's like now when you start getting into the sport and you look at trips of where to go abroad, you know, the Olidanez pops up and Annecy, but the Himalaya trips are obviously really popular now, and you guys have sort of paved the way for that. So it's interesting to hear that how it started from practically nothing.
Yeah, there were very few. So there's a Google Earth shot of Beard, and the takeoff's round about there. Mm-hmm. So it's funny, people probably think, oh, the Himalayas, oh my God, I've got to get really good to go there. But in fact, flying in Beard is way easier than flying in just about anywhere in the Alps, I think, because it's such a simple topography, and you can see it's just this big ridge, gets a bit lower going down that way, but you can just, I think I've got another picture after this. Let's see. Then you just got spurs coming off the main ridge, one after the other. You climb on one, glide to the next, climb on one, glide to the next. It really couldn't be easier. There's hardly any wind. When the day heats up, it just pulls the air onto that main ridge, and it couldn't be simpler. I mean, obviously it gets a bit more exciting when you go behind the main ridge, then it becomes a bit more complex, like the Alps. So that's what, you know, it's perfect for, from beginners to experts. Everyone can have a great time there. You just kind of choose what your level of commitment is for the day, and take it from there.
What sort of height gain are you talking there?
The highest I've ever got is about 5,800 meters, I think. People have got higher. People have got over 6,000, I think. You know, it varies quite a lot. Some days it's quite hard to get up, you know, and you're hard pushed to get to 3,000. But yeah, varies. Generally on the front, you won't get to much. You're unlikely to get more than about 3.5 on the front, but then when you go in the back, then it all steps up a bit. There's layers in the air. It's often quite inverted. So yeah, you kind of, you know, you can go from being on one of these front spurs here, and it's a slightly inverted day or something, and you're really having to scratch. You kind of just have to keep going round and round and round and round and round and round in circles, and slowly stepping up. And then once you get high enough to go in the back, then it goes boom, and off you go to super, super high.
Have you pushed much over the back and done much exploring for yourself and much adventure there?
I have. I mean, I listened to your podcast with Tosh, and it made me feel a bit inadequate, and because I was thinking about it, I don't think I've ever gone off for more than like 5 or 6 days, vol biv. But I've done a lot of exploring around the Beard area, you know, pushing. I've got a few pictures. Let's see if that's going to work.
5 or 6 days exploring in the Himalayas is pretty epic, though, mate. To be fair.
Yeah, but I haven't got completely, you know. I'm in Western Nepal. I imagine you're feeling pretty lost. Yeah, not every spur's got places to land on as well. So it's like the most incredible place to kind of learn to do vol biv. And if you're lucky, as you might have seen in the film at the beginning, if people were watching, there's normally shepherds around as well. So if you land near a shepherd camp, they might look after you. You know, you get a bit of milk from their sheep or goats for your tea and stuff. Have a good chat. But yeah, I think I've got some. Yeah, and here's some good pics over the back. So I mean, I think a lot of these shots, they're from various different flights, but a couple of them use a sort of a route you can fly to the Kulu Valley, Manali, which is a sort of tourist town, and it's by car it's 6 or 7 hours or something, but you can fly it in sort of 2.5, but you've got to cross some quite high passes. So in there, I think it's one of the passes. I think I've got a photo actually here. Yeah, you can make out a tiny glider there. You can see my map.
Your screen's actually frozen from me.
It's frozen.
I'm actually still on the front edge.
Oh right.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to close that down and reopen that picture, maybe. But
okay.
Yeah.
Should I stop? Can other people see what I'm showing?
No, it looks like it's coming up that it's frozen for people.
Okay, hang on.
There we go. Your screen's working. I can see you fine. Just your screen share didn't there.
Try that again. How's that?
It's just saying it's started screen sharing, but there's nothing on there.
Do you think it's me going slow? Sean sent something. I can check whether my children are breaking the rules.
It just says it's trying to share the screen, Jim.
Yeah.
To share, because I can see it. It's come up. It says you are screen sharing.
Yeah, it just says that you've started screen sharing, but I can't actually see anything. Maybe we'll let it settle down for a couple of minutes and come back.
All right,
Because I'm sure you've got. There we go. We've got a good picture now.
Oh yeah.
Move your cursor a minute, Jim.
You seeing that one?
Yeah. See, that's with the tiny little glider. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Eddie.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the back. I've got a few more. So you're seeing. Wow. So this is on the way to Manali, and that's the Kulu Valley there. So you got to be very high to cross this snowfield. Yeah, it's another thing. I mean, I don't know the first thing about mountaineering or anything like that. I wouldn't know which end of a crampon to put on. So sometimes I feel a bit stupid flying.
I've learned that it's the sharp end down.
Okay. if I find one when I've bombed out some, I'll know which way to put it
Take
on.
that piece of advice with you, Jim. I can offer you that. That's about as far as my knowledge goes.
Yeah, so I try not to land too high anyway.
You must still have some pretty amazing stories, though, mate, from your time there. Your things that you've seen, things that have happened. Like stuff. All the years you've been there, you must just be full of amazing.
I have got one lined up here somewhere. I can't remember what order I put these pictures in, but I think it'll come up in a minute. So I'll just tick through these.
Wow, look at the terrain.
That's one of my favorite spots. Yeah, it's a holy lake. They do a trek up there once a year. It's like they get there in a day from the nearest village, but it's like 8 hours, and then they camp and walk down.
Wow. So how far are you? How far are you generally from somewhere? If you were to land out here, I mean, obviously you wouldn't probably mountain flying.
The thing is, you rarely when you land out, because at this point you're so high that you can, unless you really cock up and crash or something, you can always glide out pretty much to a village. It's pretty rare that you find yourself, because even I mean, I suppose some of those, there was that one hanging valley I showed you. If you got low in there, you'd be in trouble. But I've never had, I've always got somewhere by evening. I've never, unless I wanted to camp out, I've always been able to get to somewhere. But this is 4,500 meters or something, I think, this lake.
Wow.
That's a flight back. There's something we did a few years ago, Eddie and a bunch of mates. We managed to fly back from Manali. That was the first time anyone had done that.
That looks like it would be booming there.
It was, but yeah, actually, now you mention it, I think it was around about here I got the strongest thermal I've ever had. It was just going
how
up
strong?
Yeah, I think it was about 8 meters on average, though.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, you don't get. I mean, it's not crazy strong there either.
And are we talking sort of big, wide thermals or little, small, punchy stuff, or does that vary with the?
It depends.
Yeah,
once you get over the back and it's not inverted, you get nice, big, wide ones. Yeah. But on the front, if it's inverted, you really have to turn tight. It's good. It trains you for every kind of condition, to be honest. So the UK groveling is quite good when you're on the front. That sort of patience to just keep going round and round and round and stick with it.
What about wildlife, birds and stuff? Many
birds? Yes,
griffins.
I think I can. Oh, here we go. Good timing. Well, you timed that one nicely. There's a good picture of a griffin, HGV, Himalayan griffin vulture. I guess lots of people might have seen that. Well, if you haven't, you've got to check out on YouTube paraglider versus eagle, the Russian guy who was in beard, who had one going to his lines. So they're the biggest ones, but there's all kinds of different sorts of eagles flying around. And this one's my favorite, the lammergeier. You don't see so many of them. This was a very lucky picture I got. And
picture.
They're the ones, the bearded vulture, they're the ones that drop the bones to smash them so they can eat the marrow.
Wow.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty wild out there.
Me, John and Eddie, we've all got a bit older. I think that was the beginning of Sky Safaris. But one of the things we used to do, because I haven't, since I got a proper job, curses of that, I haven't been working with John and Eddie. I get out there a bit, but I haven't got the time to do it. But we set up, one of the things we could do is get the local guys to set up a camp that we fly to. It's kind of Raj style-y in a way, but that was great. So you could, with the group, you fly and it's like a luxury Vol Biv, and you land and you're greeted with a cup of chai, and you get a nice dinner in the evening and all of that. So you can see down here, that's the camp.
What a place to land there! That looks amazing.
Yeah, it's brilliant. In fact, that's in the film. In the film that we started showing, that's the first place we land. So I kind of scoped it out then, and then we turned it into In fact, things have changed there as well. They've built a couple of little lodges, as a French guy's built an amazing place.
So did you so obviously India's been a massive focus for you, because of like for your personal life and stuff, and then with paragliding. What about adventures elsewhere? Have you taken paragliding? You've been other places and flown, like other than just with comps?
Sorry, you broke up there. I don't know if it's my thing.
Where have you been elsewhere? Where have you taken your flying? Has it led you other places to, like, have you done any adventures elsewhere? Have you just stuck because it's such an amazing place in the Himalayas? I mean, I can imagine you just spend a lifetime just flying there and not worry about going anywhere else.
Yeah, mainly. No, I haven't. I mean, I did a fair bit in the Alps, but I haven't flown in the Alps for a while. The one big adventure I did other than India was in Ethiopia in 2001, I think it was, with Innes Powell and Bob Drury. That was a hell of an adventure. That was crazy. I mean, that was wild country. Some of the places we landed there, some of the people we met, make even the most kind of remote villages in India seem very, very sort of civilized and sophisticated. There were guys I met. There was one place we'd land in places there in Ethiopia, and people would scatter. They'd be totally freaked out. They wouldn't even come and talk to us. That was quite disturbing, Wow. And they wouldn't come. And then I remember one bunch of guys came to talk to us, and they were only wearing animal skins and things made from guns, basically. It was kind of bits of ammo belts and things made out of metal from guns, and then animal hide. Yeah, that was wild.
Very reassuring when you land, thinking about how you're going to get back animal skins and ammunition.
Yeah. And I remember one place we had to walk down, the weather was shit, and we got to a road, and again, so different from India. We waited 7 hours before a vehicle came by,
Bloody hell.
So remote. It was a big main road as well. It was one of the main roads joining two areas, but yeah, nothing going on at all. That was great. I think it's pretty dicey again, wasn't it? It cooled down a bit in Ethiopia, and I kept wanting to try to go back, but hasn't happened, and I think it's all a bit hot there again, isn't it?
Well, yeah, so you are the second person to actually say to me about flying in Ethiopia. They said flying in Ethiopia is pretty full on, is really good flying.
Yeah.
I wasn't, from listening to their stories, I wasn't massively sold on flying there. And you haven't exactly sold it to me again. So maybe I'll come with you to the Himalayas before we head off to Ethiopia, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's probably a bit easier, a bit more infrastructure. But I think people have been flying in Ethiopia a bit more since we went, and there may be a bit more knowledge to build on. But yeah, the people were great. I loved it. But no,
that's generally the way, isn't it? You go to somewhere like that, even though you're doing something that's pretty crazy and pretty wild, it can generally subdue the people who maybe aren't as welcoming previously. When they see you land on this great big paraglider or you're carrying, there's automatically, no matter where you're on the world, there's this, like, people are inquisitive and they want to know what's happening. And when you start telling them what you're doing, it is pretty amazing to people who have nothing to relate to it to.
Yeah, that's very true. And in Beard, of course, people, when we're the early days, you get big crowds, and you still get big crowds, and everyone's very friendly when you land out, but it's obviously not quite such a big deal anymore. But yeah, so everyone's so friendly there. It's great.
What when you landed in the school grounds?
We're pretty friendly.
Were they?
Yeah.
What about the kids?
I think it was like more of a village.
Who's this?
Is that for us? Or was that
I thought that was you, Jim, then.
someone unmuting?
Someone's unmuted. I thought your wife had come on, Jim, and was grassing you up.
It's not my kids, but I was just looking at the thing. I've just stopped their internet because mine's all going a bit slow here.
I thought you were being grassed up for something you'd done then. I thought you
No, it wasn't me. It must be someone else.
Somebody else has got a dodgy landing story. They'll have to tell us that one, and that can come out at the end. So
you asked if I got any stories from Beard, and I have got one lined up with some pictures. I think if you want me to tell that. It's one of my
100%.
So, how did the story go? Where are we in my pictures? Well, I remember it was the last day of the season. Eddie and I had been guiding. I think John I don't know if for some reason John had left already, and we wanted to have a good day. Or maybe we had two days left, and we wanted to have a good go in the back, go and have a big fly in the back. And for some reason there was a screw up with the taxis. That was it. My glider got stuck down. I'd walked up but had to wait too long for the guy. I was in a really bad mood, real hurry. took off in a rush, and clearly had forgotten to zip up my harness properly, the back of the harness. And we went on. We did a little tour of the back. So I think this is maybe from that flight. This picture. So we've come over the main ridge, but now we're running out of time. We've got to push back forward. Can you see my cursor when I do this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're pushing back in this sort of direction down to here. I've got another slide here. So yeah, we would have come over here. This isn't from the same flight. In fact, maybe. So we would have come over here, and we were gliding along there. And I suddenly felt a bit of a shuffle. It was around about here, quite high above the ridge, probably at least 500 meters above the ridge. And I felt something weird. And I looked down, and I could see my first aid kit, which was fluorescent yellow, falling below me. I was like, oh, that's a bit weird. And then I felt behind me, and I was like, oh shit, the back of the harness was completely empty. So the glider bag had fallen out, and in the glider bag was this big bum bag, which had my sat phone, my passport, my wallet, 400 quid in it, you name it, the credit card, everything. I was like, oh my, what am I going to do? And so Eddie and I, we kind of flew around here for a bit. It was late in the day. There was nothing we could do. And my radio wasn't working very well either. I couldn't really talk to Eddie, but luckily Eddie had seen it, and he vaguely marked it on his GPS. And then we flew back to Beer. And I told, I landed in the land. I was like, oh my God, I was meant to be. The next day, I had one more day to fly, then had to, go back down to Delhi and fly home. But I didn't have a passport, I didn't have any money. I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. And so it was a bit like the Magnificent Seven. We rounded up a posse. I've told a few mates. And in the end, there were 8 of us. So it was me and Eddie and 6 other friends, including Kiko and his girlfriend on a tandem, a couple of tandems. Antoine Laurent, do you know who I mean? He did the big Himalaya Traverse, and his wife, Lynn. And then it was Yitka and... oh God, I forget his name. Terrible. He's probably listening. Duncan. I haven't seen 2 of them. I haven't seen since. Anyway, so we were like, let's go and see if we can find this thing. And this is the Chachu, who's the guy who is sadly no longer with us, but he used to run the chai shop on the one chai shop on Takeoff. And we told him what we were going to do. We said, is there anything we need to look out for? Will there be anyone there? And he said, oh yeah, a few. Probably you might probably not, but you might meet some hunters. And we were like, oh yeah. What are they going to be hunting for? He said, bears. All right, it's a bit exciting. And how do they hunt them? He said, well, rifles and traps. So, okay, great. So we're going to be rummaging around the mountain, in the forest looking for this thing. There's going to be bloody great, bear traps around. So that kind of spiced things up a bit. And anyway, so this shows you, so this Waldo's the peak. We came flying down here. I dropped it somewhere around here. And then, we flew in. And Yitka, she hadn't been flying long. She was amazing, Polish lady, and she landed in the toughest place near us. Most of us landed here, and then of course it was a bloody long walk to get there. It looks like it's not far, but in the Himalayas, what looks like a 5-minute walk from the air is going to be about an hour. And it took bloody ages to walk all the way. So this is us flying along. That's the landing. That's Antoine and Lynn, where they landed the tandem, and then we set off. There's Tony, Antoine, and we set off, and you can see, so basically it landed in this sort of area around there. It was incredibly steep Himalayan hillside, and of course, we only had a vague point. We all thought this was a complete wild goose chase. There's absolutely no chance we're going to do this. There's Eddie, and it was already about sort of 2 o'clock by this time, and we had to walk there. By the time we were actually got into the search area, which is here, it was getting quite shady, and we spread out, and it was, no paths or anything. It was complete dense jungle. We were on radio. We're looking for an hour or so, and it was beginning to get dark. And after a while, we were like, okay, guys, we all agreed on the radio. This is too much. We're not going to, we might as well make our way back up. A bit dejected. We had to climb back up, and it was, and then I got to the top with a few of the others, and then we were on the radio, and the radio was a bit broken, but we heard from Antoine and Eddie. They'd paired up. And they were climbing back up, and I think it was Antoine was ahead of Eddie, and he looked back. They're literally having to climb up through trees, a little cliff face. They looked back. Antoine looked back at Eddie, and then there on a little ledge behind him was the bag with everything in it. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Wow. The chances of fight was talk about a needle in a haystack. It was way beyond that. And so this is us. We were sitting. We just heard this on the radio. We couldn't believe it. It was like, we found it. No, but we must have misheard. absolutely impossible.
Wow.
And then it was obviously too late. Everyone was hoping to fly off again, but it was too late basically, because there's no way we were going to get to a takeoff in time to fly. So we had to walk. If you look at that, we had to walk all the way back from the search area to here is where we ended up camping. So that took an hour and a half, I think, at least. And on the way, we did see, in fact, Lynn, Antoine's wife, reckoned she saw a bear. She completely freaked out. And we did see that there's evidence of bears, scraping the tree. The other thing we saw, which is a bit less exciting, more fun, was flying squirrels as well, because at dusk you get them. These big squirrels that have got they've got webbing between their legs, and they jump out the trees and they glide down. That was pretty cool.
That's
and then
amazing.
we got to the end there, made a huge fire, and between us we did have a bit of food in our harnesses and stuff. We all managed to eat okay, and the tandem wallers made a tent out of their tandems, and they were all cozy, and that was fantastic.
So did you manage to get everything back?
Everything was fine. Sat phone was working. Everything absolutely fine.
Wow.
The fall must have been broken through the trees, and
The biggest relief of that was seeing a picture of Eddie with a beard. We don't need to see one without.
Having seen the one earlier of him without a beard. Yeah.
Exactly.
I was showing these to a friend earlier, and he was like, "Eddie looks much better with a beard." Doesn't he?
Order has been restored now. Like the Matrix was upset for a moment when Eddie didn't have a beard.
Yeah,
that's amazing. That is real. The possibility of finding that would just, but I mean, lots of people would have just I'm never going to find that and not bothered going back. But you assembled that little team, and then you even find it just as you're giving up looking for it, really, which is amazing.
Yeah. And also again, if everyone else hadn't been so enthusiastic, it was, come on, we'll give it a go. Come on, we've got a chance here. Because I was so pissed off with myself, and I was already pissed off with the day, because I was late and I'd missed the day, and then you bloody idiot. And I'd written it off, and everyone was like, no, come on, we'll have a try. So it was a sort of collective willpower. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that's so it was just an error from you just being feeling rushed on takeoff, just chucking everything in. It was just that sort of error.
Exactly, being frustrated, pissed off, in a hurry, and didn't zip up the back of the harness.
It's amazing how these tiny little mistakes. I mean, this is a harmless mistake. You lose some bits, but it can be your reserve handle getting caught on something. It can be so many. And you are a very experienced pilot who knows exactly what they're doing. But it's just amazing how just in that split second, that's when something can just go wrong.
Yeah. Don't get cross as well. If you find yourself in a bad mood when you're about to take off, you really want to stop yourself, slow down, and check that you're doing everything right. Not a good state of mind to take off in.
Definitely not. It does look like an amazing place to fly, and I think when having heard Tosh's story and then now hearing your story from Bear, I think when all this is over, there's going to be a big push for me to go, because I've spent some time in the Alps, and obviously I've spent a lot of time in the Pyrenees, but I think it will be a push for mine to get to fly there, because I just think it just looks so wild and so vast, but so appealing. The people seem to be really appealing. And I've spent time in India. I've been to India for fights.
Oh, yeah. Whereabouts?
Friends have
for fighting?
Yeah, so one of my guys has fought in India a couple of times. So I've been to Mumbai, New Delhi, and somewhere else. I can't think where. Mumbai, New Delhi, and somewhere else. But everyone I met was lovely, and I just think somewhere like to do what you've done there. I am really sort of captivated by it now. The flying's big, it's adventurous, but it doesn't have to be crazy, and the people seem lovely.
Yeah, no, you can't go wrong. I used to feel a bit bad about promoting it so much and it getting too busy and too popular, but I think that cat's out of the bag now.
You've ruined it for everyone, Jim. Now you've ruined it for everyone. Yeah. But I think it'll be like from what I'm getting from you is that for lesser experienced pilots is also quite a good place to go, and I think the Alps can turn quite bad quite quickly for young pilots, who are just learning. But that sounds like somewhere you could go to beer and you could play, and then you could go back next time, and it starts to open up a little bit more at a time for you as you start to explore just slightly more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As I say, you can just you could totally choose your level of commitment from from doing a top to bottom to a lovely, great big open landing field to going in the back and doing crazy vol-biv stuff. But the one thing you do obviously got to bear in mind is that obviously, rescue facilities. Well, rescue's quite good. Even the locals are now really clued up, and everyone obviously want to fly with an inReach or a Spot or whatever, and people will come and find you pretty quickly. But of course, the hospital's not great, and there's no helicopters. Pretty hard, it's still a bit tricky, and they have to come from quite a long way away, and the nearby hospitals aren't great. Obviously, once you get to Delhi, it's a lot better. But yeah, so you want to still big margins. I was flying easy wing. I think only once I took a comp wing out there for a competition, but generally I've never flown anything racier than a C there, just to feel comfortable. So you've got to bear that in mind. But that aside, which obviously is very important, it's brilliant place for anyone to fly. I think anyone never gets disappointed when they go there, and the weather as well is ridiculously reliable when you go in autumn. Spring you get better days.
Yeah, the season's quite short there, is it?
Season's very short. That's the only thing. Yeah, the season generally sort of mid-October to mid-November, something like that. Of course, apparently this year was the best season ever, weather-wise. No one was there.
But that's just simply because there wasn't a load of foreigners weighing the sky down.
Exactly. That's what they say. Who knows? But that's what everyone was saying. All the local guys were telling us. Yeah.
So, would you say your most memorable flights, or the flights you've enjoyed the most, have been there, or you have experiences from everything? Because you've got a flight that I really want to do in the UK. You have, which is a flight to the Isle of Wight. Now, where you did it from is not where I want to go from. Where I want to go from is a bit tricky, but your flight was pretty amazing. When I heard,
where do you want to go from?
I'd like to go from Westbury,
and then cross where?
You'd have to go. It's just down by Poole, sort of.
Right, but isn't? I've got the pictures for that as well, because I knew we were going to talk about that.
But you have to be with mine. You'd have to cross really low.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to do about 10k. Actually, I can't remember where. But hang on, where are we? You've got to do about.
Go under 2,000 feet for a long time.
Yeah, for quite a long way. I don't think it's feasible. Whereas that's why, because basically, so I'm flicking through all these, but I think I've got. Here we go. So, yeah, that's the flight. Oh, there we go. But yeah, here is now from about there, isn't it? Is all. I should have put the airspace on, but
yeah. So if you come around the edge, you can just off that little spur, you can just tag on the edge. So you wouldn't be as far, but it's pretty big, yeah.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that, because when I learned to fly, so of course I learned to fly on the Isle of Wight round about here. Yeah. And in fact, I remember one of the hang glider guys, when I was learning to fly, he did a huge flight up to Gatwick or something from the island. I don't know. He must have crossed here. But people did used to fly quite often. Well, I don't know. I mean, a dozen people, I think at least, managed to fly on paragliders on this route before the airspace was shut, or made or lowered, down to 2,000 feet ceiling. And that basically that happened just as I got into flying cross country. And of course, having had a long attachment with the Isle of Wight and having learned to fly there, I was super keen to fly back. So it's always been my dream flight. And so this is the track of mine when I did it. When was it? It must have been 2018, I think. It was the middle of June. But yeah, so the only possibility since then, as far as I'm concerned, maybe if you think you can skim along at under 2,000 for that'll be very impressive.
It would just, because I got to Swanage, I was sort of like, I've done Swanage a few times now, so I was thinking, oh, maybe maybe you just have to not post your track log.
Yeah, poke up above it a bit, or maybe get on radio. Maybe you could talk to air traffic control. They might let you.
Yeah, there we go. No, I think it would definitely be tricky. But so talk us through your flight that you did in 2000, because I can remember you doing it. I can remember when it happened and it got posted, and I was sat on the train on a retrieve home somewhere, looking through the flight, thinking, "Wow, that's amazing."
Well, so it had to be the perfect kind of day, in that we wanted a light northerly, not too strong, because because Coombe is here. I had to get around. Again, there's no airspace on it, but no airspace marked, but there's lots around here that you can't go through. So from about here, I'm going round the airspace. So I didn't want it to be too windy, otherwise it'd be impossible to track crosswind. And then got to Portsmouth. And actually, I'd got there before. I'd been there twice before. I tried twice before and bottled it because I wasn't getting lift over Portsmouth. And I remember one time there was a good cloud. Here, I've got some pictures. So that's approaching Portsmouth. Portsmouth is here. Yeah, Portsmouth here, the Spinnaker Tower. And I got here before. In fact, one time there was a nice cloud just, in the Solent downwind, but I thought, but I was probably, I can't remember how high, a couple of thousand feet, but I thought that is too necky just to glide out under a cloud, not know you're going to be high enough. So I bottled it. I've landed in Portsmouth a couple of times. Because also we have a family house, we've had it for years there on the beach there. So my dream was to fly there. Okay. So I got here. You can see where I got to, and it was all going quite nicely. I had a sort of 10k tailwind, reasonably high. I think base was about 3.7, and when I set out over the water, I was at about 3.5. When I committed, I thought, okay, I'm never, it's not going to get much better than this. Let's go for it. But you can kind of see as well, though, that so if you look one of the earlier pictures, you can see there's a few clouds, but you can kind of tell that they're beginning to dissipate already. Mm-hmm. I should have paid a bit more attention to that, perhaps. Because with hindsight, it was a stupid decision, really. I cut it a bit fine. You can see here, again, there's a few clouds around there, but then there's that picture, they're disappearing, aren't they? And then they're really beginning to disappear. There's one left, and so I've set off here. And for the first sort of few minutes, because it's 7k, it's quite a long way across water. Yeah. I measured it afterwards. I think, okay, I did know it was that far, because I'd spent a lot of winter evenings looking at the map, thinking about it. But when I set off, so I had the tailwind, it was still quite buoyant. I had kind of a lifty line, and I was feeling, pretty pleased with myself. It was all looking good, and you can kind of see here. So that's my track overlaid onto Google Earth. And then there's more of it, but you can see how it gets a bit bad down there. And there's a side view. So this is when I kind of committed. I'd taken a few zeros and went off, and then maybe did another zero there. It was all feeling pretty good. And then, I kind of started to hit the sea breeze as I went across. And so from thinking this is going to be a breeze, I'll get no pun intended, I'll get a climb over the island and I'll be able to fly home. I put the keys to the house in my pocket. I was all ready. And then suddenly when I got to about here, I think I started sitting up going, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? What have I done? What have I done?
Well, also, you've crossed it one of the widest parts.
Yeah, because, I could have gone a bit that way, I suppose, and crossed yeah. But when I was here, you see, I thought this is fine. It's easy. I'm in, no problem. I'll get there with loads of height. But I really tensed up, I remember, and I got to a point, I guess it was around about here, when I thought, okay, it's going to be tight, but I'm going to make it. And I started just, screaming. Yeah.
Made yourself more aerodynamic as well, which helped.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then, I left, as I said, with about 3,500 feet. That's how high I was. And when I crossed the coast, I was at 500 feet here, and I landed somewhere around about there, I think.
So it was necky.
It was definitely necky. Looking back, it's quite a long way.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Into the sea breeze. So I don't know. I was thinking about it. People have done it since as well from the mainland. I think the best place would be to do it from Harting down. There's a northeasterly just on the South Downs. Then it's only about 20k to the coast, I think. I don't know what the best conditions would be. I suppose maybe I could have been a bit earlier. I can't remember the exact timings, but it'd be nice to get there before the sea breeze had kicked in. But
what wing were you on, Jim?
I was on Zeno.
Zeno, I thought so. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a good performing wing as well.
Yeah. That's an amazing flight, isn't it? Did Innes fly from the Isle of Wight back to the mainland?
Yes. Yeah. He'd done it from back to exactly. I think he was the first to do that. Yeah. But there have been plenty of hang gliders have done it. Plenty have flown to the island. I don't know if any have done it the route I did, any hang gliders, but plenty have done it the other route to the west end. Yeah.
Yeah, what an amazing flight.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'll be repeating it.
I will be trying. I'm gonna just every time I'm just gonna take like a little inflatable duck or something with me.
I was looking at boats below me, thinking, can I land on that?
Or at least, can I land near it so I can get rescued at least?
Get rescued, exactly. Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
it
that's
was
that's an
bit
amazing flight. That
gung-ho.
has to go down surely as one of your most memorable UK flights.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, also, mate, something that I wanted to talk to you about was the North-South Cup, because I've been lucky enough to be in the team a few times now, and I absolutely love it. I really love the North-South Cup. It's like my favourite thing each year because there's nostalgia. And when I first started paragliding, I'd hear about the North-South Cups this weekend, and I was like, how did you get involved in that? Like, no, I was like, invite only. I was like, imagine being a pilot invited to that. And it was just, then you hear a bit more. Once you've been a few times, you hear a bit more what it's about, and you're there, and there's a laugh, and it's fun. But it is everything that I think paragliding competitively should be. It's just amazing. It's just a great fun weekend.
Oh, great. Well, that's so good to hear, Wes, because that was the whole point. You know, I could tell you some more stories about my early comp career, but in brief, I think I did things too fast, and I ended up in the PwC in 2004 on a new comp wing that I hadn't flown. And as I said, like when my first tasks in new comps have always been a bit exciting. And it's a long story, so I won't tell. But I ended up throwing my reserve, and I was fine.
So where were you?
It was in Bassano and Feltre. It was split between the two.
Okay.
And the weather had been rubbish, which is another thing that kind of, so the various things that put me off, you know, proper comp career. And one of them was being stuck in places in shit weather for a week, you know, not doing anything. And then I kind of realized that I was moving, I'd stepped up too fast, and that there probably needed a bit more. I mean, I'm always more training, because I'm always amazed by these guys you read about. Is it Luca Donini and whatever, who, you know, only fly 3 comps a year and don't fly any other time, and manage to keep on top of it. What happened with me is I had this it was a Gradient Avax RSC, and I don't think I'd even flown it before the comp. And I got, so we had 6 days of rain. And then the last day we managed to have a task. And pretty soon from takeoff, I got stuck somewhere with a bunch of people, managed to climb out, get out of there. Not many of us got out of there, so I was feeling very pleased with myself. There was Lee Gaggle was ahead, and we had to race along the ridge. And I thought, okay, right, here I am, PwC, I'll catch these guys. Trimmers full off, speed bar full on. And then within about 10 seconds, whack, and the whole thing just went berserk. And threw my reserve, and ended up, I was so lucky, like that one bit of grass on this huge rocky and wooded hillside. But yeah, I thought, you know, maybe there's more to this. I need to be more committed to the training and stuff, and the handling of the comp wing and so forth. Because I remember I went up to there was a guy called Akim Juice, who was I think he was a test pilot for Gradient at the time. He was known as Big Bird. And I said, hey, you know, I threw my reserve on your glider today. What's going on? He said, well, tell me about it. I said, well, you know, I had the trimmers full off, I had the speed bar full on. And he just looked at me and said, you know, you completely.
Yes. When you were telling the story initially, I was like, well, I'm not sure comp paragliding's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. You need to do a bit more research here. And anyway, so I kind of got slightly, I mean, my own fault probably. I'd sort of decided that maybe top level comps wasn't my thing. And again, I did a few British Nationals overseas legs where the weather was rubbish and you're stuck through it. And I kind of got fed up with it, but I always did the UK leg. I've always enjoyed that, even though often that was rubbish. It was a write-off. But when it was good, it could be so good. We had one at the Long Mind where we had 4 incredible tasks over 4 days. And I just used to love that when it went well. But then they stopped doing it. The comps panel, you know, decided against it because often the weather would be terrible. And it was around about then, or a couple of years after that, I was talking to Hugh and Jockey about it. And we said, you know, let's try and get something else going in the UK. And that's when the North-South Cup was born, with this idea that we don't choose the venue until, you know, a day or two before. And that, I mean, we used to try for 4 days. We've got a bit lazier on that. And so now we rarely do 2 even. But we still manage always pretty much to get 1 cracking day out of it. Because I think it was only 1 year where we've completely had to bin it, where the weather won in the end. You know, we'll postpone it and try again, but we had to give up. But generally, we've broken lots of records, and because if you throw enough good pilots on a good day into the air, they're going to get something good done. Mm-hmm. And so that's I'm very glad to hear you say how much you enjoy it, because I absolutely love it, and it's turned out very well.
like it brings out as well the best of UK flying. I mean, those 2 days that we had in the Lake District a couple of years ago, you can fly a whole season and not have a weekend like that in the Lake District. So for us to have all descended on there, and then the first day was a bit more, Barney and I pushed right out front really quickly, got away quickly, flying through rain clouds, landed on the ground. 20 minutes later, the rain had cleared and people carried on to go. It was one of those amazing days where it was like, oh, touch and go. Is it going to be good? Then the second day was just the most epic flying in possibly the most beautiful scenery that the UK could offer.
It was incredible, wasn't it? That first day, I've got a couple of pictures from the second day. I love this one. But that first day, there were like sort of funnel clouds going on and stuff, weren't there? And it was well done. I mean, people had amazing. I mean, I think it's the most amazing days flying. The second day I've had. Well, both days were incredible. I was quite nervy again because I think it was my first flights on a new glider on the Flow Spectra.
Mm-hmm.
And there was the other guy there who's flying one. What's his name?
Simon.
Very nice fella.
Simon Swiss or Andrew?
No, not Simon Swiss. He's got one since, but it was
Andrew.
Andrew Williams, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think he'd thrown his reserve on his or something recently, and he was quite. And so that was giving me the heebie-jeebies.
And it was a full-on day. It was one of those days where when you took off, it wasn't so bad. Then you'd hit boomers. Then you were flying among rain clouds. It was a weird day.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. I think it was definitely the strongest day I've ever had in the UK.
Yeah, it was
both days. Yeah.
Yeah, that second day was just incredible. Look, 2 triangles set out, just a choice of fly the big one or fly the small one. And it was just, you would never think you're going to get round it on a day like that. And it was just amazing. Just, look, I mean, that scenery there, to be flying a task with great people in that scenery was just amazing.
Yeah. And so if anyone's listening and thinking, oh, well, I can't do the North-South Cut, well, drop me a line, bribe me, whatever. It's pretty flexiable. Where's the
bribery's the way I got in.
And how was it? Sorry?
Bribery. It's all about bribery.
There you go. Yeah, buy a few drinks or something. And it's like, and commitment is more important than quality as well these days. Anyone who's turned up, several years in a row will definitely get in again, or shown good commitment, because that's what it's all about. We have a slight problem sometimes if it's too far north or too far south, then only half the team turns up from the opposite end of the country. But
which is ludicrous, because even the raffle, the bit at the beginning, all of it is just it's got all the elements that are missing from good competitions worldwide. It's got all those elements in it. It's fun. You're meeting up with people who you live in the same country, but you don't see them for the rest of the year. It's fun. It's entertaining. It raises some money for charities. It's got all the elements that other comps lack. Plus, then the flying can be full on and serious.
Indeed, great. Well, no, it's what I think it's the sort of thing I feel proudest of, perhaps, in my flying career, that we got that off the ground. And I mean, all credit to Hugh as well. Hugh behind the scenes, to some extent, is the one that really pushes it along. He's even though he's sort of
just no credit to Jockey because he's from North.
Yeah.
So all the credit to us Southerners. I'd like to touch a little bit away from flying, mate, if possible, because, I mean, I could talk to you all day about flying, obviously, but the other side of your life is something that interests me in the yoga and the yoga aspect of what you do. It's sort of, it's so multifaceted that, like, I use a lot of yoga for rehabilitation, but then you obviously have like tantric yoga and meditative yoga, and I just wondered, like, where your interest stemmed from. How did you pursue it, and where you've taken it, really?
Well, it's funny because, I mean, so the reason I kind of became an expert, I'm a sort of, expert. I work on the history of yoga through texts and anthropological fieldwork and stuff in India. But the reason I got into it was because I'd spent years in India wandering around with Indian holy men, and one of the things they do is yoga, and that's about the only thing of what they do that you can study through Sanskrit text. The rest of it is just sort of passed down through word of mouth and teacher to pupil. So as a result, I ended up studying the text of yoga. Most of my colleagues have come into it from the other angle of having become.
Click back onto your main screen. Sorry, Jim. Click back onto your main screen.
Oh, yeah,
so you
yeah.
can see,
Sorry.
mate.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. So yeah, most of my colleagues have kind of got into yoga here, you know, in the West, and then so I come at it from a slightly different angle. For me, it's kind of part just one aspect of the broader world of what these Indian holy men get up to. You know, I've spent years living in that world, and I almost sort of maintain a distance to some extent from the. I see what's Tim Pentreath. Wes, can you ask Jim to do some yoga? So performing. Do some juggling. Juggling Jim. I can do that. That reminds me of something. Yeah, I did one of my first nationals. I was suddenly called on stage because the prize giving was being delayed to do a juggling show. So I did a sort of combo yoga juggling thing. It was Steve Senior just collared me. I didn't know anyone. He said, "Right, on the stage, go."
We definitely need a video of that at some point.
I don't know. Hopefully, no one got that on video. I'm not sure how competent I was then. But with the yoga stuff, so yeah, so I've very lucky. So I got into it kind of, as I say, not by design. I started studying the history of yoga properly in about 1995 when I started my PhD, because that was what they call a critical edition of a Sanskrit text on yoga, and no one had really done that before. So that involves going to India, going to libraries, monasteries, temples, finding manuscripts of a text, and it's a bit like Chinese whispers. You'll get a bunch of manuscripts of the same text, so you've got to compare them all, work out what you think the original was, translate it, and so forth. And then I realized at the end of that there was lots more to do, and I've been pursuing that ever since. And I've kind of been very lucky in that when I started, yoga was still a bit kind of esoteric, you know, hippie fringe thing, and over the course of the last 25 years it's become this huge mainstream thing. So people want to give me grants to keep doing research and that kind of So I've been able to, like, just coming to the end of a 5-year project. I was a great team, and we've been working on the history of yoga through texts and interviewing people in India and looking at old art historical materials, that kind of thing.
How much of a part of your life is yoga? Or are you just more interested in the history of it, in the study?
I do it most days, yeah. My teacher, I had a teacher in India who was, you know, he was revered as a master yogi. But it's funny, you know, the sort of things he was revered for doing, I probably can't talk about on when I can, when I could in public. But it's not just being a bendy contortionist; it's doing strange things with other parts of your body and stuff. And you know, and it's more. I mean, yeah, it's a very different world. The way that, you know, the yogis in India, they'll do a sort of intense practice period when they're young, and then the idea is that then they've got attained control of their body and mastery, and then they'll only do it every month or two, just to kind of keep themselves in check. It's not like this, and they're not so obsessed. The whole kind of focus on postures in the West is very much seen as a preliminary practice in India. It's something you do to keep the body fit and supple, you know, so that you can sit in meditation for long periods and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of quite. I try not to, you know, I try to say that there is lots of continuity, because otherwise my work becomes less relevant. But really, it's quite a big disconnect as well between what people are doing in India and what people are doing here.
I mean, I think that's why it's so intriguing, and it's because it's so diverse. And then you get, like, obviously now the commercial side of yoga. Yoga's so massively commercial now, and then like I use yoga when I meditate, and then through meditating I find yoga, and it's something that I really enjoy. I don't know the history of yoga, but I do like the fact of when you strip back all the buy this mat and use these pants and do all that. When you get rid of all that and you strip that back and you start to look at the more Buddhist or the more ancient Indian ways, and you realize that it's more a spiritual journey than it is just about a pose or an exercise. I really enjoy that. Meditation's been a big part of my life, because especially when I was fighting, I struggled to shut my brain off. So I've used meditation a lot, which made me discover yoga, really. And I like the more traditional aspects that you seem to have explored.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Well, that good for you. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone. Well, I don't know everyone, but a lot of people realise there is more to it than just the postures, don't they? But it does. The focus seems to be kind of 90% on that now.
Do you think it's helped you in your flying at all, the meditative understanding, or do you think you've been able to use anything from India? Do you think you've been able to use anything throughout your flying?
I haven't thought about it so much recently, but I definitely used to notice a correlation. If I made the time to have a good yoga session in a day before I went flying, I generally have a good flight. I can't work out exactly why. Maybe it puts you in the right headspace, I suppose, to keep relaxed and make good decisions.
I've never seen you flying with a funny shaped harness or anything, so you're not flying cross-legged or anything. Might eke out some extra kilometers by getting you to straighten your legs.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah, it wouldn't be very good, would it? Lotus position whilst flying, not very streamlined.
No, mate. Listen, we got some questions. People have been firing some questions in, so I'll get onto them because I don't know how in depth they're going to be.
Okay.
Let's have a look at some of these questions that we've got. Sean should have sent them over to me. Right. Did I hear right? Chachu is no longer with us. Is it Chachu?
Yeah, Chachu. Sadly, the guy who ran the chai stall in Beard. Yeah, he died a few years ago now. It must be 5 or 6 years ago, I guess.
You've got like a big group of friends out there now who you frequently see. You know, you visit Beard regularly, so you've got a big community out there. You know quite well.
Yeah, absolutely. Although they've kind of been diluted now. As I said, when I first used to go there, there'd only be a dozen at most, really, and you'd know everyone. Every glider in the sky, you would know who it was. And now, like I say, peak season, I think there's probably 300 people there. So it's it's not quite such a homely thing. But Chachu's grandson has now taken over the chai shop. He's known as Babalu, and he runs it. And the poor guy, he had a bit of a nasty flying accident. Actually, he busted his leg, I think, but he seems to be back up and going all right. So there's that continuity there. But yeah, he was great. Chachu was lovely.
Okay. Ines once told me the story of his flight from the Isle of Wight back to the mainland. I think he was the first. Is that on your bucket list? That's from Steve. Oh no, I'm not sure, from Sean. So so that's obviously we spoke about that. Is it something you consider trying, or you're done with crossing that?
No, I would. I think it's probably better going that way because generally you're downwind and you're not going to hit the sea breeze. Do you know what I mean? If there's a sea breeze, it's going to be behind you. And there's plenty of people doing it. Is it Richard Perks? He does it quite often, I think, now from the island heading towards Portsmouth. And they do it pretty, necky low heights. I think, there's someone the other day left at about 2,000 feet, but because you can rely on having the wind behind you and stuff. It's okay. I'd love to do that. And as I said, there was a guy, I can't remember his name. Oh, Gibbo, I think he was something Gibson, Mark Gibson or something. He was a American hang glider pilot who used to work for Airwave when Airwave were based on the island. He did an amazing flight to kind of Gatwick airspace from the island.
Wow.
He was learning to fly.
How is the flying in the Isle of Wight?
Hey?
How is the flying on the Isle of Wight?
How is it?
I've never flown there. Yeah, is it good flying there?
I haven't flown there enough in recent years, but I'm on the Telegram group and stuff. But yeah, they're doing great things. There's lovely ridge runs, there's amazing ridge runs, and there's pretty good thermic flying. And as I say, yeah, I don't know how many this year, but there's definitely half a dozen flights across the Solent, I think, this year.
Amazing. It's so close. It's a great holiday venue. And if he's got flying, like a lot of people now, my holidays seem to revolve around, can I fly when I get there? What can I don't go on holiday to get punched in the face. I do that enough in the day anyway. So what can I do? Can I fly there? If it's not comps as well, it's nice to go somewhere where you can and that's just down the road, which would be amazing to fly there, stay for a weekend and fly all weekend as well.
And then fly back. That'd be good.
And then fly back. Oh, in an ideal world. So what are your plans now for you're still working, you're still teaching, but your plans for the rest of the year, you have anything big planned? You're hoping to get back out to Beer when we open up again, I guess? Yeah,
I had been hoping to go in April, but I can't see that happening, to be honest. That's all looking a bit tricky. There's a big festival as well. There's these Kumbh Mela, these huge festivals in India where all the sadhus and yogis and everyone go. and that's happening in March, April. I was hoping to get to that, but I don't think that's going to happen. So now I'm hoping for October, November. But I was just talking to Eddie recently. Eddie's got this enormous old removals truck. I mean, huge, great thing that he's converting into a camper camper truck. And he's very keen to. We're doing a first aid course with Jockey and Matt Wilkes at the beginning of April, and then we're thinking of heading up to the Highlands, up to Scotland, to spend a few weeks up there in April.
Amazing.
That's a dream. Whether it'll happen, I don't know. But yeah, why not?
Sounds amazing. An amazing crew.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah,
fun.
those you won't. Eddie's so. Every time I meet Eddie, he's so unassuming. He'll turn up, doesn't hardly speak to people who, if he knows who says hello and stuff, but then he'll take off and just flies amazing flights, does amazing things. You would never think by looking at him, he's just this adventurous guy who's off flying amazing things, and he'd be on a Delta and I'd fly everybody for the day. Just I love flying with Eddie.
Yeah, that was very impressive. The North South Cup, he did a good.
Yeah.
Now he's trying to flog his glider on the back of that. Won the task of North South Cup.
Like the guys who've got Enzo 3s who say it's a good one. Beer's great, but there's a huge amount of untapped potential all over the Indian Himalaya. Well, I can't see the rest of that question.
Oh, that's from Chris. Well, he knows the answer. He's testing me.
Where else have
Chris
you
Lovell.
For?
He's an old hand. He's one of the very first who ever went to.
So where else would you like to fly out there?
Well, there's a whole range of the Himalayas, isn't there? Up to I've hardly flown. In fact, have I flown at all? No, I haven't. We were going to try. We did try whenever 2019 with a bunch of people. Tried to fly as far east as we could, but the weather wasn't doing it. I'd love to go and fly in the Garhwal region, which is like the bit just west of the Nepal border. Where else? Yeah, I'm up for a bit more exploring, because I used to rent this cottage. It was really nice in Beard, but then my landlords took it back off me, which I was a bit pissed off about at the time. But they'd retired, and fair dues, they wanted to use it. And in fact, nowadays I don't get so much time to go there, so not having a base is quite good, because it gives you that impetus to explore a bit more. So maybe, I think, I'd love to go to Garhwal, as I say, that region west of Nepal, where all the, where the source of the Ganges is, source of all these big holy rivers, and amazing scenery. And friends of mine who have flown there say it's generally pretty amazing.
Yeah, it does sound amazing. It's definitely now on my list.
I think the further east you go, it gets more humid. The eastern bit, like there's Arunachal Pradesh, those sort of places, and friends have been there, but not quite so good. I'd love to go to Karakoram. I went to Pakistan actually March last year, but not for flying, for a work trip, and I absolutely loved it, and I'd love to go back to.
I'd like to go to Pakistan. They have really good falconry in Pakistan. And
of course, traditional,
traditional falconry, which I'd like to go for. And then other people have said about the paragliding potential, so that would be somewhere that would really interest me, somewhere out there, Pakistan, I think. Yeah, someone has just said, I hate asking these questions. I'm going to, though. The scariest moment on a paraglider. Well,
the Isle of Wight, I'd never completely lost it and thought I was definitely going in the water. That would be scary. Throwing my reserve in that comp, that was pretty scary. I think actually, though, one of them was with John Sylvester, and we were dreaming to go over the back of this over the back of the main range towards a mountain called Mani Mahesh, and we did manage to do it a few years later. John had been in there before, I hadn't, and actually I'd got to the pass before him, taken a different route or something, and I was waiting there, and then I lost height. I got right down to the level of the pass, and John came through, and he was way higher, and we didn't have radios or something. And then he went for it. I thought, okay, John's gone for it. What do I do? I'm not very high. I saw it. I went for it, and it was literally like going over. Imagine one of those guys in a barrel going over Niagara Falls. And all the wind was blowing over the pass, and I just plummeted the other side, thinking, "Oh my God, I'm just going to just stuff it straight in. What can I do? And so for a minute or two, that was pretty terrifying until it sort of smoothed out and I was able to get onto a spur much lower down, and then it was into sun, and the flushing had stopped. But yeah, for a minute or two, I was like, now I'm just like a cork bobbing in the ocean. There's absolutely nothing I could do to prevent it. It was just like, where's this going? So I think, yeah, that still stands with me. I was thinking, John, you bastard, just stood up. I should have gone when I was high, you know.
I mean, I hate asking those questions, scariest moments, because it's the next time you get a deflation, right? It's one of the, like, everything's really scary when it's happening to you in that moment. And then you get over one thing and you fly on, and then your next collapse, like, what? And for that split second, it's the scariest moment of your paragliding career again.
Yeah.
It can be pretty full on at times. So, mate, before we let you go, what words of wisdom to have an extensive career like yourself, or advice to younger people where they should fly, what they should do, how they should explore the sport?
Well, personally, I think, you know, the flights, the best flights you have are when you've got nothing to worry about at all. You're just totally up for whatever happens. Take the chance. That's one of the reasons I've never been that keen on competition. I've had great times competing, don't get me wrong, and I totally understand why people love it. But I just like being able to fly the day and take advantage of whatever's presents it. And so there's that, you know, just be prepared to improvise, just to go with whatever's best or looks best on the day. Safety wise, yeah, follow your instincts. You know, if it doesn't feel right, don't fly. I mean, I've been lucky, I think. You know, I've been, like lots of people, I've been doing this a long time. I know a lot of people who have died or hurt themselves really badly, you know. So I'm very aware of that. In beer, and I've 3 or 4 mates of mine have died. So always have that in the top of your mind, safety first. In terms of, but having said that, go to beer. If you want to improve your flying, you know, keep a good margin, keep safe. But I think it's, you know, it's one of the most, certainly, that's why I keep going back there. It's one of the most amazing places to fly I've ever been.
Zip your harness up.
Zip your harness up, exactly. In fact, probably just don't take your passport and your sat phone and all your money with you. That's not really necessary.
And wear your crampon spikes down. Yeah. We've learned valuable lessons from this evening.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, all the usual stuff, like get your reserve checked. I've got repacked. I've got to do that quite soon. It's been a while, isn't it?
Yeah, it might be a while before you need it, unfortunately. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed, though, mate. We're having crap weather at the moment, so we're not missing out on anything anyway.
No.
Mate, listen, it's been superb talking to you. I absolutely love flying with you. I really enjoyed talking to you. I could have just gone on and on all night, but I know people start to drop off after a while, and you start to lose people. We'll catch up again. Let's get a season behind us, and we'll see. Maybe I'll even come out and join you out in India. But thank you very much for joining me.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, hopefully we'll see you at the North South Cup, if not before. I think we've got dates, haven't we? Early March or no, middle of May, I think it is. Middle of May,
mate. Yeah, and I think anyone who's interested, just shoot Jim a message with your best bribes. He can only ignore you, right?
I'll take IOUs. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, just send him the bribery stuff anyway. Even if you don't make it in, just do that throughout the year. Start planning a year ahead. No, thank you very much, Jim. Also, thank you very much to the Avon Hang Gliding Paragliding Club for hosting this and paying the extra so we can have these big talks. We're working on another one for you. All of these are recorded for the 831 podcast. This will be uploaded to YouTube. You can watch it on there. Subscribe to that, I guess. And then the 831 podcast in audio form is available in everywhere you can get a podcast, basically. iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast from, it's available there. There's ones with Jockey Wilson, Russ. I've had Russ Ogden on, and I am trying to get plenty of these done for you guys to listen to paraglider pilots.
Wes, did you really mean Jockey Wilson or Jockey?
Did I say Jockey Wilson? I haven't had Jockey Wilson yet. I've had Jockey
I think you
Sanderson.
should. If he's still alive, is he still alive?
Jockey Wilson podcast. Yeah, I definitely want to watch that one.
That's going to be brilliant for everyone for a love of darts. Jockey Sanderson, he's done one with me. I should know these people's names. Yeah, subscribe, add us if you want to. But thanks again, everybody, and we will hopefully be back soon. Thanks, Jim.
Cheers, Wes. Thanks, mate.